The big change from Etsy's TOS is that it went from a items may be original or they may be non-original to items must be the original creations of the sellers. So, Jacob, let's dig into a little bit about Etsy first. Let's talk about the business model of what Etsy does. I think that's probably the first big step for us to do. Let's talk about the business behind Etsy, what Etsy itself serves to do, because I think that's valuable for us to talk about how the 3D printers and other makers are using Etsy. But let's talk about what Etsy is at its core.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know of Etsy, where are you? Because I want to live in your little world where you've never heard of Etsy. But it's supposed to be a handcrafted superstore, akin to. It's the Amazon of handcrafts, where the makers on that website sign up, they create their little storefront, and what they're supposed to be selling is, well, handcrafted stuff. It could be from artwork and paintings all the way to woodwork, and in our specific case, 3D printed objects from their own designs or designs that they've licensed. That is like the crux of what Etsy is supposed to be. Just you come here for something made by a person, not a factory.
My understanding is the original idea of Etsy was a way for people that wanted to get either custom made or vintage items from places they could not physically get to, from people that had the experience to either manufacture it and produce it, or like they had like a consignment store and they were able to sell like vintage clothing and stuff on there as well. So it was a marketplace for handmade goods, but also for like secondhand items as well, but more on the niche where eBay wouldn't function properly, right? Now, I could be wrong there, but that is my understanding of kind of what Etsy was. It was like Pinterest without the pinning, but with the ability to buy things, right?
I think, that was pretty much what I thought of it. Like, I never really... I don't care about Etsy. I should probably preface that forward. I've never really used it, mostly because I'm a maker. If I need something, I'm going to make it myself. I'm not going to go to somebody else to do it. So Etsy's been one of those stores where I like it exists. I like the fact that if I want, say, some handcrafted wood, I can go on the store and find a woodworker who makes the thing that I want. Like, say it's a chopping board, like a nice, high-quality, handmade chopping board that I can support a maker instead of a mass-manufactured product. That's what I've always seen Etsy as.
Yes.
Not saying that I've ever used it, because I haven't. I just haven't used Etsy.
I have. So I've used Etsy throughout the years. It is good. I've bought... so one of the things I'd like to get into is, like, leatherwork. But I do not possess the tools for it. But I will often buy leather scraps off of Etsy from the leather workers, because every now and then we'll get a request for like a leather keychain to get lasered or something like that, especially when we had the retail business. So we kept leather scraps around in case we needed to do stuff like that. I did the poor man's punches, which were just bullet casings, because they're pretty sharp at the ends, and they're generally darn near perfect diameters. So that's how we always punched holes, is with bullet casings. This new TOS, and it's such a minor change, but it's creating a lot of, like, I'm trying to get like the right word, controversy. It feels as though Etsy is kind of at war, but they haven't done anything. We're watching you, we're coming for you, but we haven't seen any steps taken yet. That's the big deal.
I think they might be trying to add pressure to the lowest tier of creators on there, where they are just buying, probably not even buying the licenses for what they're making. They are just producing low effort crap and then throwing it on the store that is supposed to be this area of a store that is supposed to be genuine with what you make. And they are just repeatedly printing other people's designs with minimal tweaking, if that. And they're just flooding up the ecosystem of what Etsy is supposed to be. And while it's not unique to just 3D printing, like, there are so many drop shippers on Etsy where they are lesser known things from China, and then they will buy them in and ship them out, at least there's still that edge of it's a little bit more handmade than just some person in their bedroom put a 3D printer on and they're making Flexi Dragons.
Well, and for me, it's changed into, because it's on a global scale, which is not normally something that the average person has access to, right? The average person doesn't normally have access to a global scale. Yes, you can buy from AliExpress, but AliExpress is primarily China. You're not going to have, like, I bought some leather scraps out of Poland. I bought some out of Slovakia. I bought some, like, I buy them out of different areas because I just look for leather scraps. I don't really care where they come from, but it's always interesting where they come from. And what's happening is that because it's now on a global scale, you're dealing with global costs of goods sold. Traditionally, globally, the United States and parts of the EU and the UK are considerably more expensive. And that's because they're leveraging cheap labor. They don't have to leverage shipping containers of it. They don't have to deal with middle people needing profits. Like, you're buying direct off of the lines, basically. When you're doing something on a mass market scale, and Etsy is a mass market scale, to be clear, because now you're compared to people all over the world. You have a couple of things that can set you apart: your price, your marketing, and specifically on the marketing side, the main photo and title. That's the big thing with YouTube videos, right? That CTR that we look for, the click-through rate, is all about that title and thumbnail getting you to click it. It is now a system where, because you're on a global scale, if you can't stand out as a business, you are guaranteed to fail. Businesses only succeed because they carve out some level of market differentiation for themselves, whether it is because they have one of the safest 3D printers on the market, like Construct 3D. Maybe they're playing the absolute cheapest game on the planet, which Elegoo is doing with the Centauri Carbon compared to like a Bamboo P1S. It's what, half the price, if not more than half the price, or less than half the price. So you've got the situation where if you can't carve out a market for yourself, you will fail. So how do people often do it on these marketplaces? They play the price game. And if you're in the United States, or you're in the UK, or you're in certain areas of the EU with a high cost of living, trying to compete with everybody else who is getting materials cheaper than you, labor cheaper than you, and machines cheaper than you, makes it incredibly difficult to maintain a real business when all you're doing is competing on a race to the bottom on price.
I also wouldn't say that. I would say, like, the biggest issue with just that entire problem as a whole is Etsy is the marketplace of people who do not value their time. Like, they will sell parts at literally like 5 to 10% higher than the cost it took to make, meaning they didn't value the time it took to do. There's no maintenance in it. Like, they're not doing math on the number that they're selling. They're just seeing what is the cheapest thing out there, and they're reducing it by £1, and then they're now at the top. But that doesn't mean that's sustainable. It just means they're doing busy work for the sake of busy work. And I see it all the time, like even in bigger industries where they want their machines working and throughput is the word that they keep using. And then you sit back going, if you tripled your price, but you made your customer base a third as big, could you do that? And a lot of the times the answer is yes, but they don't want to because they like the idea of being busy instead of earning money. And I see that is the same issue with Etsy, is particularly for the 3D printing side, because it is a very simple process for some of the lower hanging fruit items. Take a Flexi Dragon. I don't like talking about Flexi Dragons because there's such a stigma to them. But that is what sells.
The dragons sell. The dragons sell.
And you'll just see somebody going like, oh, I bought an A1 Mini for £200. I put one reel of filament in and I printed off 20 dragons. Well, to make my money back, I need to sell a dragon at £2 each. And that's it. That's all they really do. And then it doesn't destroy the market. It does just flood it with not even low quality, but just like middling quality tat.
Yeah.
That doesn't have any of the main benefit of what Etsy themselves as an entity wanted, which is the handcrafted effort to go into products. And from a designer point of view, I pick up on effort. I don't pick up on product quality. I pick up on how much effort it took to build something more than I do everything else. And printed parts don't have a lot of effort because you can tell they're just done on a machine. And I see that as the big issue with what Etsy are facing and why they've sent this email out, even though their policy change kind of is doing nothing. I do think it's to scare off a lot of those Flexi Dragon makers where it might be a kid, it might just be somebody who's got a machine and they went, hey, you should sell that and you could earn some money. Like, I feel it's that same level of they've got a machine, they want to use it, but they don't necessarily understand what they're doing with it. And that is why I think Etsy have come out with the policy change, just to apply pressure on that lower end.
My opinion is vastly different from yours on this.
Okay, so I'll continue then, because it might trigger you off a bit. I think this policy change is 100% good. Like, it's needing to be done. I think the amount of low energy tat that has been put on Etsy and is flooded really the creators that make good stuff, where they make their own designs or they put effort into it to make it,
and
they don't even need to make their own design. Yeah, like, there is a segment of people who care about what they do and they put effort into what they do, and just because it's 3D printed does not mean it's low effort, is then flooded with people who put the cheaper stuff on from files they haven't made themselves, they haven't bothered licensing it, and it's just they got a machine and they printed something plastic. I kind of see this as a self-imposed punishment. Like, the community as a whole have allowed people to make things much easier, and therefore we're flooding a professional marketplace with the equivalent of going to Paris outside of the first airport and there's just 50 guys with just tap on the road trying to sell you low effort things. I think it's that, and they're cracking down on it. So I think it's good that they are punishing the community to force the standards to go higher. Hopefully that hasn't triggered off half the community, because it probably has.
Well, so, and I want to be clear that personally, if you want to play this game, play the game. And I will almost guarantee you will do more sales than 3D Musketeers. But I will also almost guarantee you that you will make considerably less net profit after labor than 3D Musketeers will. We are a high margin, low volume business, right? While we have a ton of machines, we do that because our customers have ebbs and flows to them, where it's feast or famine. It's a very common thing with service-based businesses, where you need 10,000 machines one week and you need like 10 the next. And what we do is we say, okay, our average capacity is around 20 to 30 machines. I want minimally double that, right? In the event that we have an emergency job, we likely have availability for it without having to play the opportunity cost game of who can be late and me not get in trouble. No, I just go run another machine. And because we price the way that we do, the machines can sit idle for weeks, months, and outside of taking up shelf space, there is no detriment to me whatsoever, because the machines don't owe us anything. They're paid for. I was looking at my numbers. The fastest we've ever paid off a machine was 34 hours. From getting it to getting paid to getting the machine fully paid for, 34 hours.
That was really cool.
But here is your free business advice. Jacob kind of gave it, but I'm going to be very, very clear with it. Whatever your price is, double it. I don't care what you're charging. Double your price. If you lose half of your customers, right? On average, there are some of your customers that are very price dependent. There are some that aren't. They're solution dependent, okay? If you double your price and lose 50% of your business, have you lost money?
No.
No. In fact, you've made money, because what you've done is you've freed up time. Let's say you had 20 customers. You doubled your price. Now you have 10. How much are those 10 customers worth of time going to give you back? That is emails, phone calls, slicing, editing files if they need it, printing, maintenance, failure rates, packing, shipping, all of this. Your net profit goes up when you up your price. I understand that the average person will sit there and say, no, I want to be as cheap as humanly possible, because that's what's going to get me lots of sales. And while it will get you lots of sales, it will not make you a lot of profit, generally speaking. I'm sure there are edge cases where there are companies making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in net profit, but on average, you're first-time person getting into this industry will not have that kind of success and are more likely to fail trying. Maybe they'll learn a lesson, but often it demotivates people from trying again because the thing that they saw worked for others didn't work for them. If you get inundated with orders and nobody is telling you, well, that seems expensive, you're not cheap.
Yep.
Well, you're too cheap, to be clear. You need to
even
provide...
worse when they tell you are too cheap, and then you're too cheap.
I had this happen. I will forever be indebted to a architecture friend of mine who we were doing a project for. I sent him an invoice. I was very happy. It was like a $500 invoice. We were making good money on this. I was very happy. And he replied back to me saying, "Are you sure this is the right number? I believe we talked about it being at least 1,000 more than this." And I called him and said, "We didn't discuss that." He said, "I know we didn't discuss that. I've given you the opportunity to send me a new bill for $1,500 because I'm normally paying at least $2,500 for this work." He said, "So at $500, anyone who's gonna," he said, "in this industry, if you charge $500 for what you just did, they're gonna tell you that they're not going to use you because you're too cheap. If you charge $1,500, you're gonna raise an eyebrow or two, but you're gonna get a lot of business." He said, "If you charge $2,000, no one's going to raise an eyebrow. They're going to look at you as a low-cost provider. And if you can provide valuable information about how you're producing better quality to lower price, they'll take you." He said, "But if you are happy with your margins at $500, you're very happy with your margins at $2,000. I said, "Indeed I am." And I learned through the grapevine that he really enjoyed a particular bison grass vodka. It's from Poland, Zubrowka, and from that day on, every single time that he brought us a project, I cut him a good deal, and I gave him a bottle of that bison grass vodka. Because the bottle is the thank you. Because he taught me a valuable lesson without having me hurt myself. Because realistically, they could have taken crazy advantage of this, told everyone that they have, that they can build these products for $1,500, had me do the work for $500, give themselves $1,000 profit, and still undercut everybody in the industry. Instead, they chose to teach us a lesson. And so that is where I say I want to pass that on to you all and say, understand the market that you're in, because you don't want to be the low-cost provider, because you're going to miss those that care about solving the problem, and you're only going to get the ones that only care about price. Part of getting into this industry is understanding who your target audience is, and the Nocturnist does a very good job of depicting this. He said, "But remember, lots of us are selling to people rather than companies. There's a big difference." And there is, right? We are primarily a B2B and B2G. So that's business to business and then business to government. We do some B2C, which is business to consumer, but it's not common because we're too expensive. There are people locally that have like 2 bamboo printers that will print for a quarter of our price, if not less. And when people say, "Hey, I'm shopping around for the lowest price, what can you do on this?" I say, I know for a fact we are not the lowest. We're politely going to no bid this project. I don't even look at the files. If someone tells me that they are trying to find the lowest price provider, we don't even attempt, because I know we're not. And
I think that's
a
really good bit to point out is coming to
saying
people
no
like
is
Grant,
okay.
Coming to people like me, we will not give you the cheapest prices anymore. And that's the good bit, because you don't want to go to a mass manufacturing, they give you a file and they'll print it and it goes back and there's nothing you can do if it's bad.
Yep.
Most of the time, if you spending money, you want it to be a good part. And part of going to people like on Etsy, where it's a person, it's not a mass manufactured automated system, is they will sit down for a bit of extra money and they will make sure it's what you want and they will work with you. Like, the biggest thing I see is that if you use a print service like Xometry or the PCBWay printing service, that sort of stuff, is you give them the file and then it's up to them. And there is no backward and forward level of communication that if you're wanting something printed and you don't have the technology, you kind of need that communication. You need to know what is the output, what are you expecting, what is your expectations versus the machine expectations.
Like, what orientation is it going to print in? Like, that kind of stuff matters. If it's not printed in the correct orientation,
you could give it to somebody that's going to do them for like $5 an hour and that's it, but you're going to lose all of that level of, I need to know this, I need to work with you. What if the part is unprintable because you had a 3 mil hole for a 3 mil pin, it's never going to work. You want somebody to spend that time to look over it and go, oh, I noticed this, let's change it. Whereas you could save $5 or $10 on a part if it's a cheap part, and then you get nothing because you've got a part that you can't use. And that is like the big difference between coming to people like us and going to Etsy versus an online service.
Like you'll see if you go to my website, we do not have an auto quoter on the website. We don't. And chances are we never will. Every job that we do is manually quoted, and there is time associated with that, but it's because we want to know about the job. We had someone send us some parts that came in, and they looked really weird. Like, the part was beautiful, but then it had this really big cylinder at the bottom of it. I'm like, why? Like, what is this for? Because understanding what it's for can help us better determine how to manufacture it. I learned it was a sprue. They're loss casting the stuff in brass. So the standard 0.2 millimeter layer height is not appropriate for this. So we quoted them at 0.05 millimeter layer height, so 50 micron layer height on FDM. We asked if they wanted resin because we can do casting resin. They said no. We want, we still want to do it with filament because we're still in the prototyping stages. Okay, no problem. And I gave them a price. The original price would have been something like $30 or $40. The new price was $70. And Jacob has led you into like what my markup is. My markup is quite significant. And they said, okay,
part.
let us clean up the file. Yeah, they're pretty small. It's like a 3.5 hour print. But they said, let us clean this up a little bit more. We'll send you new files for a final quote. Okay, no big deal. And they said we were the only ones that asked that question, that they sent the files to. This customer doesn't care about the price. They want the solution. I called them instead of emailing them back. When you submit a form on our website, you have to put a phone number in there. I called them and said, hey, look at these files. What's going on? Let's talk about it. Let me understand what you're trying to do so that you have a better result. And they said that expertise is valuable to them. That's what we do. We specialize on providing expert advice on the work rather than specializing on being cheap. Real quick, Christopher Elliott asked about the Prusa pricing calculator. So Prusa put out a blog years ago with a pricing calculator. So it will...
I remember that.
Yeah, you give it... Yeah. So I have it. I'll put it in the chat for
in
those
reality,
that want to see it.
I would just ignore it.
It's not bad.
It's good, but it also lacks nuance. It's a generalist piece of software.
It's way better than it used to be. I think it's been updated last I looked at it. So print info, you provided a G-code file. It'll tell the printing time and hours and minutes and the filament weight. So it'll pull it from your G-code file. You give it a filament type, spool price, and spool weight. You provide a markup percentage. What's the highest it lets you mark up? Only 100%. Okay, well, fine. You can do more math. You want to mark up more than 100%.
I'm looking at the website now, and all of this information is available in the slicer as it is.
Well, not the electricity cost, not the labor cost.
It is.
You can put in... Oh, yeah, I guess you can put in how much your energy is per hour. Yeah, I just don't. I just don't. But this is good if you're trying to get a rough idea. I